The purpose of fast-track consenting is it's taking too long to get anything done in this country. We have built an obstruction economy. We're here to get things done. That's why we're taking fast-track, introduced by David Parker, beefed it up, put it on steroids, and actually going to get some outcomes for some people.
Does he agree with former Chief Press Secretary for the National Party, Janet Wilson, that, quote, the fast-track consenting bill is not an act of political alliance so much as pork barrelling at its finest, providing a new golden age for National and New Zealand's first backers, and if not, why not?
Well, absolute rubbish. I mean, the bottom line here is that we have an obstruction economy. We've actually taken an awful long time to consent something, and it's costing a huge amount of money. We want to actually deliver on our climate goals, something that I think that the Green Party would want to identify and align with us around. But you can't take 8 years to consent a wind farm, 2 years to build it. Why don't we just take 1 year to consent and build renewable energy and then 2 years to build it and get the benefit in 3 years, not 10 years?
To the Prime Minister, does he stand by his statement, and I quote, I think everyone agrees that the state must always provide a safety net for New Zealanders who have fallen on hard times, and state houses will play a very important part of that safety net, end quote.
Absolutely, including those state tenants who have been abused and victimised by their neighbours. Take Shane Smith, who's been a KO tenant since 2015 and described the actions of some of his neighbouring KO tenants. He said, I've been beaten, the house has been robbed, egged, bottled, visitors were assaulted, vehicles got stolen. It was a nightmare. The previous government and their friends in the Green Party promoted a policy that facilitated a culture of intimidation and abuse, and I'm very proud that our government is going to deliver change. We don't want to actually see KO tenants being evicted from KO housing, but actually the parents are adults and they have a choice to make about whether they want to meet their obligations and their responsibilities. That is the first port of call.
Supplementary. Will he resign if any children are made homeless as a result of his government's policies?
Talking about resignation.
There are children that are growing up in motels today that are living on floors of family or friends or in community housing provider housing who actually want a shot, and their families want a shot at being able to get into the state house. The problem today is that there is 24,000 people on a state house wait list, which went up 4 or 5 times under the previous government. There are neighbours in those KO communities who are getting abused, and I'm sorry, but we're standing up for those folk and saying to them there are rights and responsibilities in this country.
Supplementary. So is the game plan here that those who are evicted from public housing...
Start with a question, please.
Is the plan here that those evicted from public housing are made homeless or eventually end up in prison?
The plan here is to give people a shot of getting a state house who deserve a shot at getting a state house, and are going to appreciate it, value it, and actually make sure that they can actually get their shot at the Kiwi dream. That's what this is about. What this plan is about is making sure that neighbours of KO tenants who are getting abused and threatened every single day, that stops. It stops.
Comment question.
Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Could I ask the Prime Minister as to whether he's seen or heard of any policy, either here or anywhere in the world, where a tenant can have absolute contempt for the landlord, whether it be state or whether it be private, and yet be the beneficiary of the largesse being suggested by that questioner?
The deal's very simple in New Zealand. You have rights to a state house when you need it, but you also have responsibilities to look after it like it's your own house. That's the deal, because a taxpayer has woken up this morning, a lower middle income worker that the Labour Party used to care about, who's actually paying their taxes, going to work, giving it to the government to actually subsidise the living of some other fellow Kiwi. They need to respect their property, they need to respect and have responsibilities as well as rights.
Honourable David Seymour.
Is the Prime Minister trying to say that our society needs people to treat each other well and take responsibility for themselves?
That is exactly right. Our society should be built on the notion of we have rights, but we also have responsibilities to each other and to the country.
To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government's statements and actions?
Absolutely, and including yesterday's announcement that this government will finally hold Kāinga Ora tenants who are threatening, abusive and violent towards their neighbours to account for their actions. Our government believes in rights and responsibilities, so if you contribute to a culture of intimidation and abuse, it's time to change your behaviour, and if you don't, you may not keep your taxpayer-funded state house. There are just far too many families on the wait list who would respect that property and respect their neighbours to just privileging those current KO candidates, tenants who wage a war of abuse on the community is not right. And I agree with the member when he said that after 6 years in government he didn't do enough to crack down on unruly tenants. Well, the good news is, Mr Speaker, enough is enough. This government was elected to change and we're going to do exactly that.
A supplementary question. Which numbers are correct? His rock-solid estimate of the savings that his cuts to benefit adjustments will make, or the latest official advice that they'll save $1.3 billion less than he promised before the election?
Well, I can tell the member the numbers that we're not going to be doing. We're not going to increase government spending by 84%. We're not going to hire 16,000 more public servants. We're not going to increase government debt from $5 billion to $100 billion and actually have nothing to show for it. We're a government that's going to fix this economy, we're going to grow the economy, give people tax relief and ensure there's a culture of fiscal discipline. We care about renters, a group that the Labor Party used to care about a lot. And actually we're increasing the supply of rental properties, we're lowering costs that have just been passed through to renters, because under that government, average rents went up $170 a week. That's not going to happen under our government. We want downward pressure on rents, not upward pressure. Well, I'm sorry, we're here to fix things, we're here to get the country turned around, we're going to get things done, and we're going to make sure that there's more rental property available. We don't just load up landlords with costs that pass on to renters that lead to higher rents. We want lower rents, downward pressure on rents.
Supplementary question. Does he agree with Christopher Luxon? I can tell you in the National Party we understand the economy and we are rock solid in our numbers. Given his tax promises were $800 million out on interest deductibility, more than $500 million out on gambling, and $1.3 billion out on benefit indexation.
Well, look, I can tell you it is ironic that you are trying to lecture me on economics. After 6 years of being in government, of actually causing huge damage to our books, having had economic mismanagement on vandalism on a scale we've never seen before, an 84% increase in government spending, you drove up domestic inflation, you drove up interest rates, last 3 quarters of the last year's economic growth went down, and you've got rising unemployment. So I don't take lectures from you on anything to do with economics. Thank you very much.
Can the Prime Minister confirm that the fiscal impact of the mortgage interest deductibility changes is greater than the estimate of one party and closer to the estimate of another party in the coalition, because this government is actually a coalition of 3 partners working together for a better New Zealand? And does he have any advice for the guy on the other side who has no friends?
Mr Speaker, I'm very proud of the way that the 3 parties in this coalition government are working to actually get things done for New Zealanders.